Okay. Thank you very much for your patience. I would like now to turn to our guest, Mary Ellen McGroarty, who is joining us from Kabul. Mel, welcome back to the briefing. And I hand it over to you for a few opening remarks, and then you have a lot of journalists interested in asking you questions. Go ahead, please.
Good afternoon, Stefan, and good afternoon, members of the press corps. Yes, I last briefed this audience on the 18th of August, 7 weeks ago. And then we were speaking to the incredible scenes of desperation at the airport and the Taliban conquest of Kabul, them having entered the palace 3 days earlier on the 15th of August. You know, the last evacuation planes left on the 30th of August, and since then, really, those of us who have remained, but more importantly, the 38 million Afghans who still live in the country are adjusting to a new reality. It is incredibly sad, and over the weeks, a humanitarian crisis has just escalated and magnified at an incredible pace. It's a crisis that has its roots in decades of conflict and the increasing pressures of climate change. You know, we knew already that 2021 was going to be an incredibly difficult year. We were facing into a drought, the second severe drought in as little as 4 years. It's been one of the driest years in 30 years in Afghanistan. The raging conflict that went on throughout the first 7 months of the year and the displacement that accompanied that conflict, over 600,000 people displaced. Of course, the COVID as well and the impact of that, and the economic fragility that prevailed in the country. And at that period, even before the 15th of August, we had 18 million people in need of humanitarian assistance, 14 million people, 1 in 3 Afghans, highly food insecure, and 2 million children at risk of malnourished. The events of 15th of August resulted in a freezing of the foreign reserves and the suspension of development and on-budget assistance, and the consequences have just been devastating. The economy is on the brink of collapse here in Afghanistan. The cash liquidity crisis, banks had closed their doors while they're now open. You can only take out $200 a week. Savings are inaccessible to the people that had a little bit of money in the bank. The Afghan currency has depreciated significantly. Also, basic services such as the health services are crumbling before our eyes. Salaries are not being paid. Labour opportunities are drying up at an incredible pace. I mean, an important part of the Afghan economy is the informal casual labour sector. Food and fuel prices have increased at unprecedented rates. Wheat is up by 28%, and oil has tripled in price over the last couple of weeks. And of course, the significant reduction in the international presence is also causing unemployment and affecting market demand. So the drought and the economic crisis coming together is pushing people to the very brink of survival. People are selling their household goods, their carpets, their white goods, their Delft cups and plates to buy food. They are not eating every day. They are decreasing their portion sizes. They're eating less healthy foods. And many parents are forgoing food so that their children can eat. In the last couple of weeks, I have been in Mazar. I have been out around Kabul. And last week, I was in Herat with the representative of UNICEF Hervé. And there in Herat, we saw the hospitals that are becoming overcrowded with severely malnourished children. We met women who are unable to feed their children. One woman in particular, Jahan, she can't breastfeed anymore. We met a little girl, Hasina, who was malnourished and also suffering from meningitis, who has since died. In the IDP site, IDPs, displaced people who were displaced because of the previous drought and also displaced because of the conflict and have been unable to go back home, have lost all their livelihoods because there is no labour opportunities. The casual labour, again, that opportunity for displaced people provides a livelihood. In Kabul today, I was out in Kabul today, and the situation it's just desperate. I had women crying at me for food because, again, the work has dried up. There is no work, there's no opportunity to find food. Many of them, again, talking about missing meals and if they're lucky, maybe have a bit of dry bread and water. So it's really, and it's going to get worse. Winter is on our doorstep. We have a harsh winter in Afghanistan with fuel prices going up. People are going to struggle to feed themselves and keep themselves warm. I have been a long time with WFP, and it's the first time I've seen a crisis like this escalate and accelerate at the pace and scale that it is. We are scaling up the humanitarian effort here on the ground in Kabul, as you had mentioned, Stefan, at the top. The combined effort of the UN agencies on the ground, WFP, UNICEF, UNHCR, WHO, IOM, FAO, UNFPA, have reached close to 5 million people just in September with different sorts of assistance. And WFP has reached 3.8 million people with food assistance. But we need to be doing much, much, much more. As I said, before the 15th of August, we already had a humanitarian crisis of incredible proportions, and it's just escalating and getting worse. The destitution, the devastation that's wrecking this country is just unfolding before our eyes. And I just urge the international community, to provide the resources that we need now to mount a large-scale operation. And we're in a race against time at this stage. Over.
We'll go to James Bays, Al Jazeera.
Thank you, Mary Ellen, for doing this again. James Bays, Al Jazeera. So I've just heard what you said and the very grim picture. Major donors, major countries, members of the Security Council are all talking about possible new mechanisms, but nothing's actually happened yet. Can you just explain to us how urgent you view the situation now, and can the situation be resolved just with humanitarian response, even if you get everything you need, or is the bigger problem, the economic disaster that is the backdrop for all of this?
It's as urgent as yesterday and last week, James. Really, what we're seeing. We need big solutions now. The economy needs to be restarted. The humanitarian response, yes, can stabilize the situation a bit, but really we need the reserves unlocked so that the economy can be kick-started, protect the private sector, allow the markets to function. So macroeconomic solutions are urgent and required today. Over.
Tissam?
Thank you, Stefan. Hi, my name is Ibtisam Azim from Al Arab Al Jadid newspaper. I have a follow-up on the acid freezing. Could you elaborate in that? Some world leaders, when they were here at the GA high-level meetings, they were saying that they will increase and try to find some other ways to aid, to compensate for the issue of the acid freezing. Are you seeing any movement there? And what do you need to happen specifically in this issue? And then I have short follow-ups. You said that before the August 15th, there were 18 million people in need of humanitarian assistance. So what's the numbers now, if you have any estimations? And what about are you able to get where you want to get in different areas in Afghanistan? And where do you see the most needs? Thank you.
There are conversations ongoing to try and look at some. I think there's some examples from Yemen in terms of mechanisms that can be used to be able to continue the large-scale projects and to be able to continue and maintain the services, particularly services such as the health services. So I think there is discussions ongoing and moving, and I think everybody appreciates the urgency of finding those solutions. Before the 15th of August, 18 million people in need of humanitarian assistance, 14 million people highly food insecure. We expect those numbers to increase. We're just finalizing a number of assessments at the moment that will inform the programs going forward. But certainly what we're seeing on the ground and witnessing on the ground is we expect those numbers to increase, and particularly around the issues of food and the issues of malnutrition. We are able to get out across the country as WFP. I think it was around the 18th, 19th of August, our trucks were back out on the road, continuing the job that we need to do. And over the weeks, we've been scaling up, and we are able to access most areas where we want to go. Across all the provinces, we have access over. And I think the biggest needs are going to be going forward. Well, of course, it's a drought year as well, so the biggest needs are going to be in food, health, malnutrition for children, water, just across all the sectors, and shelter. Of course, we're going into the winter. The temperatures in Afghanistan dropped to -30, dropped to -40. Over.
Thank you. We're going to go to the screen. Iftikhar Ali, Associated Press of Pakistan. Iftikhar?
Thank you, Steph. My question has been asked, but I would like to ask what is the law and order situation in Afghanistan? Is it safe to move about?
Thank you. I suppose, of course, there's much less outright conflict. So it is easier for us to move across. Before the 15th of August, our operations in a lot of places were stop and go as we were trying to navigate, open conflict. We haven't seen that now since the 15th of August. There are still multiple threats, of course, but in general, it's a lot calmer from that aspect. Over.
Thank you, Majid, and then Michelle.
Thank you so much. My question is about your engagement with Taliban. How helpful or unhelpful Taliban is with regard to your work? And do you think there should be greater international engagement with Taliban to facilitate your work? Thank you.
Hold on.
No, the humanitarian. The Taliban know the humanitarian work in Afghanistan. They know the work of WFP for over many years. We are finding we're able to move across the country unimpeded, particularly right across the country, and we haven't really come up against any obstacles. We've also been facilitated, which is incredibly important, to be able to get food into the country across the borders in a timely fashion, and that's been going on over the last couple of weeks. So in general, we are getting the space and the access to be able to get assistance out to the people we need to reach. And then you asked about the Taliban engagement. I'm not going to get into a political discussion, but given the reality of where we are in Afghanistan, and given the crisis that we are facing, and the humanitarian crisis and the crisis that the people of Afghanistan currently are facing, engagement needs to continue, and international support for the humanitarian effort must be scaled up and must continue.
Thank you. Michelle Nichols, Reuters.
Hi, Mary Ellen. Thank you so much for this briefing. Just wanted to follow up on a few things my colleagues have already asked. You mentioned that the humanitarian situation has gotten worse, and you mentioned climate change and conflict. How much of that, you just said the Taliban are letting you work unimpeded, so are they to blame for any of the humanitarian crisis getting worse? And how much of it is to do with purely just the economy and the lack of funds coming into the country? And what can the UN do to kickstart the economy, I guess? Thanks.
Not easy questions. As I said at the start, I mean, the crisis that we have now, I mean, it has its roots in decades of conflict, the pressures of climate change, the conflict that raged just before, August across the country, some of it too related to the COVID pandemic, like right across the world. But since the 15th of August, I mean, the situation that the economy is in is just as exacerbating the situation. I mean, there is a cash liquidity crisis. People can't get work. I mean, the informal job, labor economy is drying up. And of course, also, labor and agriculture is not there because of the drought situation. I mean, we have a wheat deficit of 2.5 million tons this year in Afghanistan. I mean, the UN, what can the UN do to, I mean, the UN is available, I suppose, like in Yemen and some of the models that work in other countries to try and be a vehicle to be able to support the basic services, but it's really about macroeconomics as well. And it's really about, I mean, the economy of a country is really the engine of an economy. And so we need to find solutions to get the economy restarted. Over.
Just a really quick follow-up. We've sort of heard that there are various discussions going on among various Western countries about how to get things going again without any money sort of going directly to the Taliban. What sort of time frame do you think they have to get something going before the economy collapses?
I mean, I'm not a macro economist, but I would say, I mean, it's a matter of probably weeks, really, because things are, it all has a knock-on effect. Huh? One thing knocks, it's like dominoes, right? And as people become more desperate and have less and less money, which meager money, and labor opportunities continue to dry up, then it becomes more difficult. I mean, we heard one of the big companies this morning was on one of the TV stations saying how difficult they're finding it. It's one of the big factories in Afghanistan. I mean, how difficult they're now starting to find it to continue to operate. So, I mean, the situation is urgent from the macroeconomic perspective and from the humanitarian perspective.
Thank you. Abdelhamid Sayam.
Thank you so much. My name is Abdelhamid Sayam from the Arabic daily Al-Quds Al-Arabi. My question about the airport, can you tell us more about how it is operated now? Who runs the airport? What kind of security there? Do you find some cooperation when you need the airport? And are there other airports functioning now in the country, and how they cooperate with the UN humanitarian networks? Thank you.
Thank you, Abdelhamid. We were able to resume the humanitarian air service into Afghanistan from the 28th of August. We were first able to fly into Mazar Airport. And then a couple of days later, we were able to resume flights into Kabul. So we are operating an air bridge in from Islamabad coming into Kabul every single day. And we're also from Kabul, we're flying out to Herat, Mazar, Kandahar, Bamiyan, so we're getting out across the country. I mean, and there are also some commercial flights flying in and out as well out of Kabul at the moment. So it is operating. It's starting to get back to some level of normality is probably not the right word, but yeah, it's getting up and running. Yeah, we're still missing the big commercial airlines coming in, but we're at least with the humanitarian air service be able to get in and out every day. Over.
Thank you. Arul Louis, Indonesian News Service.
You've spoken about the dire food security, insecurity situation in Afghanistan. Last year, India donated about 75,000 tons of wheat through the Chabahar port in Iran, since it wasn't allowed land access. Have you approached India for increasing or donating more wheat this year? Over.
Yeah, thank you, Arul. Yeah, I mean, it's as far as I'm aware, it's a conversation that's going on with my office locally in India. So it is, and it's a conversation that's been going on for a couple of weeks now. So hopefully we can bring that to a good conclusion, and hopefully would see another donation coming in, because again, I mean, as I said, there's a wheat deficit of 2.5 million tons this year in Afghanistan. So really, we need all the help we can get. Over.
Thank you. We'll take two more questions. Pam Falk, CBS News. Pam.
Thank you, Mary Ellen. It's Pam Falk. My question is about the Taliban relationship with the UN staff and with WFP. Are they making clear to you that there is something they want from the UN? In other words, recognition or any kind of assistance? Why do you think it is that WFP was not declared persona non grata, and a few other NGOs were not as well? I mean, is there anything in particular that the Taliban would like to hear from the UN to get this aid in? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Pamela. Yeah, I mean, our engagement with the authorities and with Taliban is based very firmly on the humanitarian principles, the principles of humanity, impartiality, neutrality, and operational independence. And that's how we've always operated in Afghanistan, and that's how we continue to operate. We have been engaging for years in contested areas with them. They are aware of that's how humanitarian assistance is delivered, and that's how it's how we operate, and not just WFP, but the entire humanitarian sector. They do what I am seeing, and what I'm seeing across the provinces is that they're aware of the situation and the difficult situation, both in the rural areas and in the urban areas, and certainly want the humanitarian assistance to go out across the country and to reach the people in need. Over.
Thank you. Rick Gladstone, New York Times.
Thank you.
Rick?
Thank you very much for the briefing. Very, very helpful and interesting what you're telling us. I had a question about sort of a follow-up to Pam's question. How are the people in the Taliban that you engage with treating your staff, especially your women staff? And have you been surprised in any way by the interactions since August 15th when they took over the country?
I mean, they're not a homogenous group across the country. The engagement varies across the country. In general, it's been facilitating and allowing us to be able to continue with the work. For the female staff, it's a bit of a mixed bag. We're having our discussions in the different provinces. In some provinces, the female staff are out working in Kabul today. The female staff are out on the food distribution sites delivering their assistance. So I think it's what we're experiencing is WFP, that willingness to at least facilitate and take some degree of responsibility that humanitarian assistance will move out across the country. Over.
Thank you. We'll squeeze one last one, Ibtisam, and then we'll let you go, Mel.
Sorry, hi, Ibtisam again. Just a quick follow-up. So, just to clarify something, you said that you are aiding. You gave food assistance last month for more than 5 million people, but there's like about 18 million people and more who are in need of assistance. So my question is, what's happened? First of all, what's the criteria? Does that mean that you are assisting only the people who are most in need? And what's happened to the people who you don't assist or you don't give food assistance? And is this has to do with this gap? Has to do with the fact that you don't are not getting enough money? Thank you.
Yeah, just to clarify, 5 million people were assisted with humanitarian assistance and with food assistance. We managed to reach 3.8 million people in September. Yes, sadly and unfortunately, you know, a lot of the issue is the gap in funding. Before the 15th of August, the humanitarian appeal for Afghanistan was less than 40% funded. So what happens is then you have to make choices, and very difficult choices, and you're making choices between, you know, hungry people, right? And so we are targeting to the most severe areas, and this year it's been the areas most impacted by the drought. But now, of course, we're having to pivot as we have the drought and the economic crisis coming together, and the impact is just nationwide. Over.
Thank you very much. Mary Ellen, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us and speak to the journalists. We really appreciate it, and we hope to see you back here in a few weeks with for an update report. And thank you, and thank our colleagues, please.
Thank you, Stefan, and thank you to the members of the press corps. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.